You must have seen people who stand there absolutely certain they're right, even when they're completely wrong. Completely convinced, not because of evidence, but because it felt true. In today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, it's frighteningly easy to let emotions take the wheel. We scroll through outrage-filled feeds, consume headlines designed to stir our hearts, and share stories that confirm whatever our gut already wants to believe. And in that chaos, something dangerous happens. Most of us stop thinking. We start feeling our way into truth. As Jonathan Swift warned centuries ago, falsehood flies, and the truth comes limping after it. This video is about the subtle yet devastating psychological force behind that phenomenon. The emotional truth trap. The most dangerous cognitive bias you've never realized you were using. By the end of this video, you'll understand how easily we can betray ourselves, and how to reclaim the balance between the heart that feels and the mind that knows. So let's get into it. The heart has its reasons which reason knows nothing of. We know the truth not only by the reason, but by the heart. At first glance, Pascal's words sound like a beautiful validation of our emotions. But hidden inside this insight is a warning. If reason knows nothing of the heart's reasons, then following our feelings blindly can easily make us overlook reality. This is what psychologists call the emotional truth trap, a cognitive bias where we mistake our feelings for facts. In simple terms, if I feel it, it must be true. This is known as emotional reasoning, a mental shortcut that bypasses careful thinking. Cognitive biases in general are systematic errors in thinking, the brain's shortcuts that help us deal with overwhelming information. Most of the time they're useful, helping us decide quickly. But when emotions get involved, these shortcuts can turn into traps. We often accept whatever our heart tells us without stopping to question it. Take a simple example. You come across an alarming headline about an election conspiracy. Immediately, you feel fear or anger. Your brain, without fully engaging logic, takes a shortcut. Because this feeling makes sense, the story must be true. You might ignore missing facts or contradictions because your emotional reaction is so strong. Research backs this up. Studies show that strong emotions can cloud our ability to think clearly. One experiment found that people who relied on their feelings were much more likely to believe fake news. In fact, simply telling participants to trust their feelings made them endorse false headlines at far higher rates than those instructed to think rationally. In other words, emotionally charged information spreads quickly, and we get swept up in it. This happens because of what psychologists call the affect heuristic, the tendency for our gut feelings to color our judgments about truth and risk. When something gives us a positive emotional feeling, we underestimate its risks and overestimate its benefits. When something triggers a negative feeling, we do the opposite. That's why emotional headlines, even inaccurate ones, feel convincing, while dry facts feel dull. Our brains are wired to trust emotion first, but feelings are not facts. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. The tension between reason and emotion goes all the way back to ancient philosophy. Greek thinkers asked whether truth is something objective out there, or something shaped by our inner perspective. Plato warned that most people mistake shadows for reality. Centuries later, Nietzsche pushed this even further, claiming there are no facts, only interpretations. Modern neuroscience now supports what these philosophers intuited. The brain does not simply record reality, it filters it. Each mind is shaped by biology, memory, culture, and personal history. Emotion itself is not the enemy. In fact, it's essential. The neurologist Antonio Damasio proposed the somatic marker hypothesis, which says emotional signals help the brain prioritize decisions. A sense of excitement can point toward opportunity. A flicker of fear can alert us to danger. But this system can easily go wrong. If a feeling is triggered by something unrelated, an old memory, a bias, a wound. We may attach that emotion to the wrong situation. The feeling is real, but what it points to may not be. Psychology gives names to these distortions. Motivated reasoning is when we reshape facts to protect our desires or identity. We don't simply receive information. We mold it to fit the story we want to believe. If someone wants to feel safe, proud, or morally righteous, they may unconsciously cling to comforting but false narratives. This is what researchers call identity protective cognition. The mind is not designed for truth. It is designed for self-preservation. This is tied closely to cognitive dissonance, the discomfort we feel when facts contradict our beliefs. Instead of changing our beliefs, we often twist the facts or justify our position to reduce that tension. Philosophically, this creates a real danger. When everyone feels entitled to their own truth, objective truth starts to dissolve. Postmodern thinking pushes this even further with the idea of your truth versus my truth. And in this environment, manipulation becomes easy. Advertisers figured this out long ago. They don't have to lie, they just have to make you feel good about something. Today's social algorithms operate the same way. Studies show that content that stimulates strong emotions gets the most clicks. Outrage, fear, pride, inspiration, anything that moves you spreads fastest. As a result, our shared reality fractures. Different groups live in different emotional bubbles, each convinced that their feeling-shaped worldview is the real one. Huxley said something very related to this. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Whoever is careless with the truth in small matters cannot be trusted with important matters. We're living in a time where information is everywhere, and misinformation is everywhere faster. The emotional truth trap has always existed, but in the digital world, it has become far more dangerous. Today, a lie doesn't just fly, it goes viral. A dramatic, emotionally charged post can race around the world in seconds, while the careful correction arrives long after the damage is done. There are a few major forces supercharging this problem. First, social media and news platforms reward emotion, not accuracy. Algorithms prioritize content that triggers strong feelings, especially anything that seems to threaten our beliefs or identity. If a headline makes you angry or anxious, you're far more likely to click, comment, and share, even if it's false. And every share gives the algorithm more reason to spread it. Second, our online tribes amplify this bias. We instinctively trust information from people who feel like us, our friends, our influencers, our political side. So when everyone in your circle is emotionally fired up about a claim, speaking against it feels like betrayal. This is the echo chamber effect, a loop where emotion-backed claims bounce around inside a group until they feel like unquestionable truth. Third, the emotional truth trap interacts with other cognitive traps. Take the Dunning-Kruger effect, the idea that the least knowledgeable are often the most confident. Combine emotional certainty with low expertise, and you get people who feel absolutely convinced they are right, while rejecting experts entirely. This is why conspiracy theories spread so easily. Loud emotional confidence can drown out quiet, reasoned analysis. As psychologists note, fools are blind to their own foolishness, meaning the less someone knows, the more they tend to believe they know everything. And the consequences? They are not theoretical. False medical rumors spread because people say, "I feel like this works," leading others to abandon safe treatments. Financial markets can be shaken by waves of collective panic. Entire communities can split apart when each side becomes emotionally certain of its own version of reality. History shows us again and again, when emotion hijacks truth, societies fracture. But this trap can be resisted. It is not enough to have a good mind. The main thing is to use it well. Escaping this bias doesn't require superhuman intelligence. It requires awareness. It begins with noticing your emotions, noticing how loudly they speak, and noticing when your brain starts treating a feeling as if it were a fact. Einstein once cautioned that if we carelessly ignore small truths, we become unreliable even with big ones. In other words, accuracy is a habit, so treat every claim, big or small, with the same careful attention. And above all, never confuse "I feel this is true" with "this is true." Here are practical, grounded strategies. Pause and reflect. When something online triggers a strong emotion, anger, fear, pride, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, why did this hit me so hard? And what evidence actually supports this? Question your certainty. Play devil's advocate with yourself. List possible reasons the claim could be false. Strong thinkers don't begin with certainty. They begin by testing it. Seek reliable voices. Balance your feeds. If your timeline feels one-sided, deliberately look at credible sources with an opposing perspective. A well-researched article or fact-check can break the illusion created by emotional headlines. Learn basic logic, skepticism. Remind yourself of common mental traps, like post hoc ergo propter hoc, the belief that because you felt better after something, that thing must have caused the improvement. Knowing the classics of flawed reasoning creates an automatic brake on emotional shortcuts. Practice empathy and humility. Everyone is vulnerable to this bias, including you. When someone online is shouting emotionally, remember, they might simply be trapped in the same illusion, not malicious. Be kind and stay humble. Even the smartest minds can be fooled by their own feelings. Each of these practices strengthens your thinking muscles. Over time, this becomes habit. Psychologists call this metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. This is how you catch biases while they're happening. One practical exercise. Every time you form a strong opinion, assign yourself a bias check and ask whether emotion guided your judgment more than evidence. And remember, truth does not disappear just because we ignore it. Facts remain steady beneath the noise of emotion. Reality is patient. It waits for us to return to it, just like Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice."